think we're gonna go for it, gang. I think we're gonna try. There's a chance this might not be a very fun matchup. This is actually a really bad matchup for me. Actually, I'm pondering keeping this whimsy, but I need to find something else to support. I think we're gonna do this instead. Let's go this route and keep, yeah, that's a much better start. Keep this. So I need to apologize right out of the gate because I said that I was going to try to be more consistent and I really meant it at the time. But as I said in the last video that I posted, I was feeling a bit under the weather. I think we go with this because this technically is, I think, the safer play here on 2. And so I missed a video, so I apologize. But I also need to apologize because there's a chance that over the next, 4 or 5 videos even, you might see a lot of support decks. That is a legitimate thing. Culling Strike. Kind of getting tired of that card. I'm just enamored with the new tools that support got. If you'd have told me after seeing the base set that I would fall in love with support as a mechanic later on, I would have questioned it. It's not that support by itself is inherently a bad mechanic, because it's not. I mean, that's just genuinely not the case. It's just that I don't see anything in the base set that like wowed me. That has changed. There are so many fun and interesting decks that I've been messing around with, probably to my detriment, because I'm not really focusing on the hard climbing. Well, all right, that's another one. That's another one. Culling Strike has been my bane lately, and I don't know why, but it made a sudden resurgence. All right, so we go this route. They have no mana, and so this with the quick attack means we should push all of this through. But we are on a clock. This is a list that very well could stomp us. Whether they get like a successful reckoning off, that's very detrimental. Whether they start winning the race because they'll have big bodies that we don't really want to block with our little support units, and they can then frostbite ours. There's a lot of stall potentially in this list. I mean, we've already seen that in the form of 2 Culling Strikes. So I don't even think this is a good matchup for me, but we're gonna do our best here. And I guess I should say, I don't think it's a good matchup for this version of the deck. There's actually a couple of different versions of this list.
Strength and grace, beauty in the play. Our banner will lead the way.
I think we just let this through. The question is whether or not we go with the Genevieve this turn. I really wish we had enough for a Genevieve plus a Whimsy here, but the other problem is if I go with the Genevieve play and they do have a Reckoning, then we just basically lose our entire board not named Genevieve, because it's not going to put anything here over the threshold. And so with that in mind, actually, I do believe that this ends up being the play.
And defend.
And so we go with this and hope that this sticks, and then that will hopefully put them off of being able to play any sort of Reckoning this turn. Now they could Harsh Winds here, right? They just want to stall, but it's only 3 damage, or they could be playing Harsh Winds to maybe keep the Avarosan alive, though I imagine they're, yeah, I was gonna say they're gonna have another one, and that can set up the Reckoning for them this next turn. And so I think we pass here. I don't think we commit further to the board because, again, with the exception of Genevieve here, our entire board gets pretty decimated by a Reckoning. And so I think we play at, see, there it is. Potentially rewarded for our patience. And so our math here is looking to be that we're probably going to take 5 here and then play everything not named Genevieve and then go into a Genevieve next turn and then just pray they don't have a second Reckoning. Second Reckoning, we lose, but they kind of like earned it at that point. I mean, if you double up on the Reckonings, that's a bit of a big deal. They also could just pass here and not try to push 11 damage, but I don't think that's the play.
Today we fight as one.
I mean, they prevent me from developing the board.
I am the blade in the darkness.
And so, yeah, it's basically going to all come down to this because we don't have enough. We're just short. We don't have enough to push for lethal with an open attack. This can't block, but even if we pull this away, this is still only 9, and that's assuming that they don't have any combat tricks. So the play here is certainly Genevieve, and then just pray they don't have a second Reckoning. But like I said, second Reckoning, at that point, they've earned it. At that point, we kind of just deserve to eat it. Do I want to give them another chance to find the Reckoning here? That's actually a legitimate question as well. I think the answer is no. I think we don't go for the scout attack. I think the correct play is just straight up full on attack. I think you just do this and you don't care about the scout because, one, they cycle this, but also they get to further develop the board. Like, we kill this and who cares? Then they get to play another potential blocker. So I think you do this just to put the pressure. Now, again, Harsh Winds is in play. They have 6 mana. Could also have other Frostbite options as well. But a second Reckoning just ends the game. And so I think playing into a Harsh Winds to keep them alive versus letting them find a Reckoning that causes us to flat out lose, I think that you take this every time. And then we just sit and we cross our fingers and hope they don't have an answer. I don't know. Normally when somebody takes this long, it's because they have an answer or they have multiples and they're trying to figure out what the best path is. That timer's coming down. Maybe they rage quit because they had an opening and they didn't take it and they're mad at themselves. Stranger things would happen, but we'll take the victory and we will move on to a game 2. And that, as I said, I think that's a bad matchup for me, so I'm pretty happy we won that. So there's a chance this actually might be awful. There is a strong chance this actually might not be a very good matchup for us. Assuming anything survives, this Fey Guide actually ends up not being bad here. So the reason I say that this might end up being awful is that, again, most of our stuff is pretty tiny, pretty small in terms of size, and Swain Gangplank says kegs and direct damage, and that means in many ways almost direct counters to our entire game plan. We're gonna go with the chefs here as opposed to this because Make It Rain shuts us down pretty hard. Now they could block here and use Make It Rain, but then that's 2 cards to take out just my chefs, and I think we're overall fine with that. Oh,
A delicious challenge.
I don't want to give them plunder if we can help it. Again, that puts this in danger. I really want to play this Zed right now, but if they have removal for it, it's kind of not great for us. But if they don't have removal for it, our next turn ends up being pretty good. We're gonna take the risk. Idol is interesting, I'm not gonna lie. Because we have this to protect the Zed if they have something like a Fervor, we go this route. And then if they spend their mana, we will further develop. There was a consideration about maybe playing Fey Guide there, but I think we would rather do something like that. So like now we'll just do this to develop. I think we would rather play the Fey Guide on this next turn, right? We're gonna try to bank our spell mana, I think. Of course I say that, and now I'm really tempted to play another Chefs here. But we're not. I'm not gonna take the bait here. We're gonna draw a bunch of cards. We're okay with that overall. All right, we're a little less okay with it after that. That was a great pickup for them, not so much for us. So they're gonna try to eat our Zed. We're gonna try to protect our Zed, I suppose. Now they could have something that tries to ping this barrier, and if that's the case, we'll use Whimsy. And then we just have to pray that with 2 mana left, they don't have a Make It Rain that's gonna hit Zed. Because we would really like to keep this Zed alive for a turn. But now we have nothing to protect it. So I think we're gonna go for it, gang. I think we're gonna try.
Stay hidden.
And we lose it.
The Yordle here's with me.
At least we know what they stole from us, so we got that going. We have a stun for this when they try to eat our Zed next turn. It's mostly just a matter of, do I want to use this here or just swing with this? But we give this up without value trades, so I think we just take the damage. This is actually a pretty tight game at the moment. They manage to flip a gangplank. We're in for a world of hurt.
With purpose. Time to get rich. None can compare.
Over here! Shield up!
Taste the glory.
All right, so we're gonna hope that this is enough to get some trades and survive. The 7 mana plus spell mana and 5 cards in hand, they have a lot of options to mess this up for us. The reality is I'm just trying to stave off a Rex at the moment as well, like as far as like this turn and future turns go. I would really not like to deal with that. Let's go and do this. Again, if they have a make it rain, I'd like to spread out some health to try to keep it off of Zed, if possible.
By my hand, Noxus.
Stop eating or no more walkies! Where did you get that?
All right, so they had a fervor.
Victory awaits.
It's an awful lot of work for Zed to just end up dying. Gives me the big sad.
Carrots can
We'll be
fly,
greedy,
man.
I
This is
guess.
serious breed.
If Zed was there, we would have taken the open attack for sure. Wow, they're going that route. All right.
Batter 'em! No one goes hungry.
So we're gonna do it this way, just to try to push as much damage as we can.
You dare oppose Noxus? Counterattack!
At the moment, we're getting them down to 2. All right, so they also had the flock. We've got the Waka flock of flame.
Eyes bigger.
Free, Lulu.
Save the palm.
Mirage! I will break. Witness strength.
This Swain is potentially a pretty big problem for us. We're so close, but so far from finishing this game.
Is it adventure time, you guys? What do you say, Glow? That's yes!
I don't know if we can get out from under the thumb here. Well, we certainly can't now. I think this is going to be game. Our 3 units are stunned. And so sadly, we're going to go 1-1 for this video. Oh Lord, never mind. Like we just lose anyway. They brought all the boats. All right, fair enough. We just couldn't close it out. It really came down to the Zed, right? If we had any sort of opportunity to keep the Zed alive, maybe we push for enough damage elusive. They had the right answer at the right time, so it is what it is. But we'll still go talk about this list. I'm not convinced this is the strongest of the support lists that I've been playing lately, and as I said before, I've got a bunch of them, but we'll talk about what this one was at least trying to do. So this list is interesting because what you're really trying to do is abuse Lulu on a couple of different units, specifically Fleet Feather Tracker, and then to some extent as well Protege. But the idea that I had anyway was simple. Take undercosted units and then try to make them significantly more valuable. Duo fits that bill as well, where you're testing your opponent and saying, do you have removal? Did your opening hand contain some sort of answer? Because if it doesn't, I'm going to start strong and potentially snowball. That's the idea. So right out of the gate, 1-drops. Tracker is great with Lulu, but is also just fine with other support options. So War Chefs, you know from playing mid Demacia for forever. Young Witch, because of the quick attack, means a lot of times that 1-2 combo kind of clamps down the board early. Flower Child is just about pure stats and growth, right? Like if you open with Flower Child into a support unit, specifically Young Witch, but a support unit, you're going to get a lot of stats early. Your other 2-drops there are either support units, right? So Young Witch, War Chefs, or things that you want to support with Lulu on 3, so like Duo, and then Protectors here just to keep your stuff alive. Also running single combat as like your pseudo removal combat trick. Single combat is interesting because sometimes Lulu turns things into a 4-4, and then if that goes uncontested because they decide, hey, it's not worth my time, I can't kill that thing anyway, then sometimes you can get a free single combat out of it. It's very reminiscent of if you'd ever played like Fiora Shen decks in the past and you use single combat in the same way, whatever Shen gives the barrier to, sometimes you get that free single combat. So same concept overall. Protege, again, challenger here. It can work really well with the Young Witch. It can work really well with Lulu. I mean, he's already got the 4 health anyway, but Lulu raising the attack sometimes means he trades pretty well. Then like the meat, the core. So when I started this deck, my thought process was actually pretty simple. It was, what if I have Lulu make Zed into a 4-4 and then Zed just start swinging as a 4-4? And I wanted to mess around with it, and it's okay. Like I said, sometimes it snowballs. It's really dependent on your early draws though. Like the success of this deck depends on, you know, does your early game stick, in which case you're ahead and your opponent has to play from behind, or if your early game doesn't stick, does it draw out the removal that they may have had for your Lulu Zed combo, in which case, like, that's what you're trying to do to finish this game off. Other tools, Palm is just for like combat trick, keeping you alive. This is a very attack heavy deck. What I mean by that is that this deck shines when you are the attacker, because you've got a bunch of support units, you've got quick attack units, you've got challenger units, all of your keywords, all of your abilities here, basically they happen when you are the one attacking. So you need some defense, you need something to keep you alive, and so Concussive Palm helps with that while still letting you develop the board. Fate Guide, this is me just messing around with the idea of making Zed elusive. I've got another deck that I'm probably going to showcase at some point in the future that tries to do this a bit more consistently. Ironically, that one is also a Lulu Zed list, but I call that Lulusives because it's very elusive heavy and then tries to focus on buffs. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Like I said, I got a bunch of support decks I'll probably be sharing in the near future. One Refuge is again in here just as a combat trick, or sometimes that lifesteal makes or breaks a game. Whimsy for combat tricks. I could go back and forth on the counts on these because I think they're both relevant. And then finally, Genevieve is kind of meant to be your closer. Assuming that your early game goes well, by the time she comes down, she should be enough to help you win the game or try to put it like into the red, really threaten things. And if she's not making an impact, well, you probably lost the game already anyway. You lost to an early game avalanche or something like that. So it is worth noting that this deck is great against some and really bad against others. This is a very polarized deck. So if you're looking to try this out, I just need to warn you, because there's a chance you might try it in your first 3 or 4 games. You might just absolutely get rolled, and that's going to depend on what you queue into. So if you queue into Aurelion Soul Trundle lists that are running 3 copies of Avalanche and they hit that early Avalanche, if they hit a turn 3 Avalanche and you just don't have an answer, you're going to lose. I'm just going to tell you flat out, your board can't handle it. You don't have enough staying power to continue there. It's all about, like, do you get this early game mulligan aggressively, and can you snowball in that matchup? Other decks that really give you fits are the one that we just lost to in that second game, which would be like TF Swain or GP Swain. So again, things where they're going to have a lot of non-combat damage, and also your Ezreal decks for the exact same concept. And it's simply because all of your power, all of your oomph just comes from you attacking. And so if your units never survive long enough for you to attack, and you don't get to trigger your supports, or you don't get to take advantage of, you know, Zed making copies, whatever, if you never make it to that stage of the game, your deck does nothing. Now, you might be saying, okay, well, what is the deck good against? Well, it turns out it's actually pretty good against more traditional aggro lists. So Callista based decks, you know, I haven't seen it basically at all since the expansion, but like old school They Who Endure, but Hush kind of kicked that one out. But lists that are kind of playing more passive. I've actually had a lot of success against Daybreak decks just because they get a lot of value and they play stuff on curve, but they don't run a lot of like disruption tools in the same way. And so a lot of times, like, you just dominate their board the turn after their Daybreak. So, you know, if they play the shield unit on turn 2, that's a great way to stall you. But then by the next time you come around, hopefully one of your challenger units can eat that and survive the trade because of a Lulu buff or quick attack, and then you still come out ahead, right? So against Daybreak decks, a lot of times I found you don't snowball as fast, but as long as you kind of play for board control and, you know, pick your fights, you can still be effective. It just feels like it's like 1 or 2 rounds later than normal. This list, if you're coming from the Elder Scrolls Legends, is basically the closest deck I can think of that plays like old mid sorcerer, where you're trying to hit the board first and you're trying to establish board control by getting value trades and keeping their board free while advancing yours. And just like mid sorcerer, if you're playing against a hard control that 1-for-1s your units, you'll just fall behind. And if you're playing against any sort of deck that can outpace you in the late game and you can't pressure them, you're going to fall behind. Again, it feels very much like the old school mid sorcerer from the Elder Scrolls Legends, but this is it. This is the list. I'll put the deck code in the video description. I do have what I think are likely both better and spicier versions of support decks coming probably in the next couple of days. I don't know exactly what order I'm going to release the videos, but I think that there is a Fiora like support list that is a lot of fun. Fiora Targan with Taric is actually I think better than the old school Fiora Shen decks, if I'm just outright being honest. Like, that list is a lot of fun to play, so I'll probably do that. And then, like I said, I've got the Lulu Lucives or the Lulucives deck that I think is better, because this one goes for board control, the other one just tries to outright race, and it works probably the way you're imagining it working, right? It's like old school elusives, but you're using the new support units to further cement your early game. And then that deck in particular uses Targan to take advantage of things like you know, the new gemstones support unit, etc., etc. So anyway, getting ahead of myself, that's for other decks. This is this deck. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. That code will be in the video description. Thanks for watching. Sorry I missed yesterday, but I am feeling much better, and until next time.